Say her. I checked. That's okay. As long as there's enough of it, it's okay.
Okay, so Janice must.
Good morning.
I got two choices. I can either see y'all or I can see what's my Bible says.
You see us now.
Of course, when I put these on, now I can't see you. Y'all are kind of fuzzy today. All right, so this is Talk About Michelle Day.
I always got to get somebody something to talk about.
All right, we're looking at Abraham and Sarah. We'll pick up in Genesis chapter 12. You could have shushed them. Tell them to be quiet. That's what happens when you get the super glue instead of your lip gloss. Okay, where was Abram and Sarah and his family relatives all originally from? Originally.
The land of Ur.
Ur. That's the sound your car makes when it won't start, right? Ur of the Chaldees, it's called. So that gives you an idea, and Ur is one of the known ancient cities. Where are the Chaldees? A bunch of islands down in the Mediterranean somewhere. Okay, Chaldea is the region around Babylon. So that gives you an idea about where they are. By the way, where's Babylon in modern countries?
Iraq.
Okay. It's a part of Iraq, and the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that get talked about are still there, though they've been dammed up and they don't flow near as much as they used to. By the way, you may have noticed, if you've ever looked at a map, say, of Mississippi River,
Yes.
look at one in the 1800s or the 1700s. It's not the same place. Rivers have a bad habit of just kind of wandering around. Like Sarah? Just kind of wandering around. Rivers do that. And quite often they will end up being, over a course of a few centuries, in a completely different location. It shouldn't be surprising to us that, do you remember, okay, if you've read the book of Daniel, do you remember how the Medo-Persian army gets into the city of Babylon? They dam the river upstream from the city, and when it dries up, they walk under the gates. The gates are really nice. They kept anybody with a boat from getting into the city. But when you dam the river and divert it and run it around the city, now there's no water flowing, and they just get down there and walk right into the city. By the way, you will find that is pretty common method of attack. If you really do some serious study, you'll discover that David and his men actually got into Jerusalem the same way when they conquered the city. They went up the well, the water track there that was supplying water to the city. You go in and nobody's guarding that, and you can't put a very solid wall there. That is, if you want the water in the city to drink. So the very thing that makes a city so secure can sometimes be the biggest danger. Ur of the Chaldees. So that connects Abraham and where he's come from with a lot of other events and peoples that we're going to see. You notice that Abraham and his father and his nephew and others in the family have left there with all their goods. So where's the rest of the family? Where's all the other cousins and all? They're still there. They're still there. And that point, of course, gets made. We looked at in Joshua's comment. Gets made by Joshua is, hey, Abraham left his family when God called him. So chapter 12 begins with God again telling him. Isn't that an interesting situation? God tells him, okay, leave, and he leaves, and he goes part way, and he stops. You ever do that? Get about halfway where you're going and stop? Kind of like the funeral procession. Don't quite get where you're going. And, those sort of things happen. Abraham and his family, and what significant event happens there in Haran? Ooh. Man, wish we'd have stayed awake in class last week. What significant event? Who do they lose in Haran? Okay, Abraham's father passes away there. And they, chapter 11, verse 32, I guess it is, that the days of Terah were 205 years, and he died in Haran. Now the Lord comes to Abram again and says, get up and go. Leave the country, and apparently he still has some relatives there. He keeps leaving all the place. You know how it is. You go cross country and you stay with family, friends. Okay, how many of y'all have family spread all over the country? Okay, welcome to the world of the weirdos. We should probably never get a motel to stay in as we travel across the country. Trouble is, you know what happens when you come and stay with relatives? They don't want you to leave. Either that or they ask you to leave before you get there. They're usually one of two kinds. And apparently, it seems like Abraham and his family, Terah, and all have some other relatives there. And Abraham's got to get up and leave that again. Okay, just a little practical application. Is it sometimes difficult as a Christian to leave other family members behind because you stand up for what's right in God's eyes? Anybody ever face that? That's a challenge, isn't it? And I hate to tell you, those of you that are younger, it doesn't get easier. It's always hard. There are always people that you're related to that you just wish they would do the right thing. And, wow. You just keep on doing what's right. And that very much is the story of Abraham's life. So, verse 4 of chapter 12, Abraham goes forth as the Lord has spoken to him, and Lot with him. And Abraham's a young fellow. He's only 21 years old, right? How old? Oh, can you imagine? Yeah, but can you imagine at 75 picking up and moving?
Yeah.
You see what I have to put up with? Like the little boy that was being taken out by his mother. Y'all pray for me. Abraham and all of his family, Lot, his wife, and their possessions, all pick up and leave. Verse 5, Abram took Sarai, his wife, Lot, his nephew, and all their possessions, which they had accumulated. And they put them in a large U-Haul truck. Can you imagine moving everything? Bedouins in the Middle East still do that. They have huge tents. I mean, we think of a tent. You know, we think of the tent of God, the tabernacle. And it's real easy for us to get the picture of a little pup tent. It's not. It's gigantic. And they picture this one. If you go back to the time of Moses, as they're wandering through the wilderness, for those 40 years, they are packing that tent, and their house tents, and everything else. The local 7-Eleven packs up, the hot dog stand packs up, everything packs up in the community, and they march.
Kind of like a traveling circus.
Really. Just unbelievable. And you get that picture. It's easy for us to think that the Israelites just camped there in the wilderness for 40 years and wait for everybody to die. God doesn't let them do that. That'd be the easy way out. Here's a generation of people that have disobeyed God, and he said, you're going to die here. And God says, and you're not going to like it. Okay, parents, ever tell your children that? You're going to do what you're told. I don't care whether you like it or not. Another one of those things you learn in parent school, huh? Don't care whether you like it. This is not about you liking it. This is about you doing what you're told. And that is very much the situation. Here's Abram and Sarai and Lot and all of their possessions. They have hundreds of certain. You will remember perhaps that in a few years' time, Abraham has to go and rescue Lot because he's been carried off by another nation. Where does Abraham get his army to do that? To assault a city? To whip them and their army? And to bring back everything they own? It's his own household. It's his own people. So, you have to realize that Abraham he's a pretty wealthy man. Of course, if you've ever known a farmer, we've had several friends over the years that had pretty good sized farms and all, and we tease them about, farmers are rich, you know that. You know how a farmer lives? They go and beg the bank for enough money to plant a crop this year because that's the one that's going to get them out of debt and pay all the bills. And then when they harvest the crop and sell it, then it's go plead with the banker against it. Next year will be better. And honestly, we tend to think, if you've never been around farming, we tend to think that it's always a big crop and they make lots of money and get rich every time. It's never that way. It's always, yes, they have, typically, most farmers own millions of dollars worth of equipment and land and all. But you can't go down and buy a donut with your tractor. Well, you can, but then how do you plant the next crop? If you sell your harvester to get you a new car to drive around town in, then how do you harvest the next crop? So their wealth is there, it's real, but it's tied up in a way that doesn't make it very accessible. And Abraham and Sarah and Lot have an immense amount of wealth, but it's all pretty well tied up. Unless you get rid of everything and sell it, and then what do you have? How do you make a living? How do you survive? So you picture, you've seen pictures of the old West cattle drives. You realize that's what Abram and Sarah and Lot and all of their servants look like? Ranch hands driving massive herds of cattle, of sheep, hundreds of miles. They gather up all their possessions which they had accumulated and the persons which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And they came to it. They eventually get there. Boy, Don't you love those little summary sentences like that? What's between they set out for Haran and they got there? How much backbreaking work? How many long days? In chapter 12, as it continues from verse 10 on, they run into a famine. And they make a trip down to Egypt. Egypt is kind of the breadbasket of the Mediterranean world. One of those fun things that you don't quite see as easily. In the New Testament world, Egypt is sending huge transport ships, tankers, container ships, filled with grain up to Rome and all the rest of the Roman Empire. This is the breadbasket for the Roman Empire. It comes into play. There's a season. There's a good time of the year for traveling. Can you imagine when the first hurricane whips up and starts heading up this area of the Atlantic? Somebody with a big container vessel heading out to sea. What happens occasionally? We hear about it. Every year there's at least one or two. They get in the middle of that storm and do you remember what happens to Paul in his journey to Rome? He's on one of those vessels that's going to chance getting through, and apparently their radar was down or the satellite connection was down because they didn't see the stormy weather that was ahead. Can you picture trying to sail around? You've probably read Galveston, Texas. Had a hurricane hit it in the 1800s, just absolutely destroyed. They still have no idea how many people died in that. And most of the people that live in that area know somebody that died in it or have some relatives that were involved in it. A few people survived, but why? They don't have that fancy radar. They don't have that satellite system telling them exactly where the storm is. They had no idea until the storm arrived. And that was Paul.
They also didn't have any government help back then either.
No, nobody's going to help them. And you recall how that plays out. As the storm hits the ship and sailors, some of the sailors and some of the soldiers on board, hey, let's kill the prisoners so they don't escape. And then we'll take the lifeboats and go for it. You remember that Paul, if you don't remember all this, time to go back and read the book of Acts again. Some really exciting things that happened there. I'll leave you to go read it. I won't tell you how it ends. But there is a good snake bite and all kinds of things. And there's a really smart Roman army officer that knows Paul and trusts him enough that when Paul tells him, says everybody's going to die if somebody goes sneaking off in the lifeboats, and he cuts them loose and says, okay, nobody's going. We're going to do what this man says. Like I said, if you don't remember that story, time to do a little more reading. Go back to the book of Acts. Genesis 12 here, famine and a trip to Egypt. Again, imagine the logistics of moving your everything to Egypt, even if they have grain for the animals. Do you remember what happens when they get to Egypt?
Good-looking woman.
Sarah is too good looking. I've never had anybody say that about me, but apparently it was true of Sarah. Isn't it true of Sarah? She's just too good looking. Here's Abraham and Sarah and the king there in Egypt. Okay, what's the term the Egyptians generally call him? Pharaoh. See, you can talk. I got it out of you. Like pulling teeth, huh? The term Pharaoh is literally the term for a king. And you will see, even the Bible will go back and forth about the king of Egypt. The locals may call him Pharaoh in their language, but don't get too uptight about which is the right way to term that. So Pharaoh takes a liking to Abram's wife. Now, consider the situation. You're down here because of a famine in your homeland. You've got all of your servants, you've got all of your animals to feed, your family to feed, and all. And this guy says, I like your wife, she's pretty. Can I have her? Now, Abram has a great solution for this. What does he tell Pharaoh?
My sister.
It's my sister. Is she?
Yes.
Actually, she's his half-sister. So he's not lying. Well, sort of, but yeah, you remember that little phrase in court of law about telling the truth? Yeah, and I got King's X behind my back when I tell it, huh? All of y'all that just realized what King's X is, you're just admitting you're old. I don't know, does anybody still do that today? Samantha, do they still have King's X? See? Don't even have it today. Well, you need to learn that. When you cross your fingers and tell somebody, you can tell them a big whopper of a lie and get away with it. Apparently that's what Abraham seems to think. I can get away with this, and it's, after all, it's good. I'll just tell Pharaoh that this is my sister, and the problem is Pharaoh accepts that as the truth, and he says, pretty girl. I'd like to have her for my wife. And now there's a problem.
I'm not sure Abraham had a plan to get her back. I don't know what he was going to do.
Trade her in for a newer model or something? I don't know. Isn't that honestly the way it goes?
Sure.
When we sin, when we do something dishonest, do we really have a plan?
No. Don't see the long-range consequences.
Exactly. Rather famous writer, American writer, made the comment one time that, telling the truth is always easier to remember what's going on. Because you tell a lie, and what's the next thing you got to do? Tell another one to cover up that one. And then what do you got to do? Tell another one. And, by the time you got a half a dozen of those things going, which one did I tell you, and which one did I tell you, and wait. It's hard to keep track. How much easier is it to keep track of the truth? Yeah, it's a whole lot easier, isn't it? It's a whole lot easier. And that's the problem that Abraham runs into. He tells a lie.
And he doesn't learn the lesson.
Oh, hang on to that one. We'll get to it in a minute, won't we? But if you've actually read ahead, you know exactly. Okay. Do you realize that nobody has ever made the same mistake twice? I know none of you have. Have you? Anybody ever make exactly the same mistake twice, or 3 times, or 4? Slow learners, aren't we?
No, just want to be sure.
We just think we'll get away with it the next time, huh?
Practice makes perfect, huh?
That's right. If I tell that same lie again, maybe I'll keep everything straight and it'll work out. Now, by the way, remember who we're talking about here.
And remember his children and their line
What's the term that's used for Abraham, though, in Scripture? He's a friend of God. He is the Father of the faithful. This is the example for us to follow. Really?
No, this is the example. No, this is the example that God is a loving, compassionate God. If we do our best to change
Oh.
our lying ways.
And that's hard, isn't it? By the way, stay tuned during the sermon. Today's chapter of the book of John, Jesus will discuss exactly the same thing. Isn't that surprising? How God keeps coming back to that same point. If you'll actually do the right thing, it will work out far better than the good idea fairy, I think, will always get you in trouble. Years passed. If you jump up to Genesis chapter 15. Years have passed. There's problems in the there's all kinds of problems that Abraham and his family have faced. But in spite of that, in spite of their failures, God keeps adding to the promises that he gives Abraham. He called him. When he called him, he said, okay, you're going to come and follow me. And then he gradually begins giving him a hint of why he's taking him there. Is that fair? Shouldn't God just tell us everything up front? I mean, like a good used car salesman. Or used motorcycle salesman, huh? Yeah, that flat front tire and the broken spokes, don't worry about it. It'll run fine with them. Just because it's running on one cylinder, don't worry about it. And we get used to the idea of full disclosure laws. How well do they work? Do we get full disclosure about everything? Is it really fair? How many of you take your children at the age of 2 and explain to them every challenge they will face in their lives? Why not? Because a 2-year-old wouldn't understand all that. Without the advantage of growing up and maturing, they have no idea what you're talking about. Do you suppose God does the same thing with us sometimes? Do you suppose that as we continue to grow and mature as Christians that we can better understand what he's saying if we continue to study his word? Are there things that suddenly will connect and make sense and, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about? I won't mention any names, but some young person licked her finger and cleaned off her niece's cheeks there this morning. And your mother and all the old people in here just laughed when they saw you do it. Because we knew you were going to grow up and do that. And by the way, y'all don't bother telling yourselves, I will never act like my parents did. Because it's a guarantee that you will. You will do all those things, you will say all those things that your parents did. Do you see the connection with Abraham, though? God is telling him a little more and a little more and a little more. Does he even understand what he's being told? Not very good at it. Genesis 15, verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision and said, do not fear, Abram. By the way, read through Scripture how many times God comes to somebody and the first thing he tells them is don't be afraid. Now, when I get up to preach this morning at morning worship, the first thing I'm going to tell you is, now don't be afraid. I'm not going to hurt any of you. And Mark's got his baseball bat, and he's looking at me saying, what, are you crazy? I'm bigger than you are. This is not a problem. You're easy to pick on, huh? Fair game. Why would you tell someone not to be afraid?
Because you're scary.
Because there's something scary going on. And several times when the Lord appears to people, have you ever had somebody sneak up on you and you just literally jumped out of your skin?
Yes.
Just so absolutely frightened. Your heart beats faster. Oh man, you fall over. Oh, this is terrible. Not much fun, is it? The first thing that God tells Abram, I wonder how he appeared to him. What does he do that the first thing he has to tell Abram is, don't be afraid. You really have to wonder. Do not fear, Abram, I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great. Well, by this time, he's got quite a list of mistakes. Would God really tell him, I'm going to help you and guard you and reward you? There's a song in our songbook. We use it occasionally for an invitation song. Just as I am. You know why the author of that song wrote that song? Because for years they had felt that they were unworthy. It's the strangest thing in the world to be studying with someone about becoming a Christian and have them tell you, says, look, I've got some things in my life I've got to clean up. I want to become a Christian, but until I get better, I'm not going to do it. Do you realize how crazy that is? I never once picked up a patient out on the highway or in somebody's house and said, look, you're dying, you need to go to the hospital and get better care right away. And they said, I can't go to the hospital until I get better. I don't look good, I need my hair done. I need to shave. I need to do all these things. And I will go to the hospital one of these days when I'm feeling better. Is that the dumbest thing you've ever heard? Is there any reason that we would tell God, I don't want to be your child, I don't want to have your blessings, I don't want to obey you until I do better? That's how you do better. Your reward should be very great. Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? He said, I'm going to reward you. And Abram's getting up in years now. He was 75 when he first moved there. So he's beginning to get seriously old. I won't mention any names to compare any of you to him, but probably about Mark's age. You know how that goes. The reward, of course, Abram's thinking, hey, okay, you're going to reward me, but I'm not going to live forever, and who will I pass this on to? He tells the Lord, he says, I'm childless. We have no children. The heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus. His heir is his chief servant. That's the closest thing to an heir that he has. Abram says, since you have given no offspring to me, one born in my household is my heir. So the first one that was born to me, how old do you suppose Eleazar of Damascus is? He's probably pushing old age, He's got to be 40. I made Mark cringe anyway. Then behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said, this man will not be your heir. but one that will come forth from your own body shall be your heir. And God took him outside. Apparently they're having this discussion in the tent. And again, not a pup tent. Bedouin tents, I mean multiple rooms bigger than this auditorium. Some of the rooms bigger than this auditorium. When you see the rest of the tent and the other rooms off, you begin to realize that these are serious houses. I suspect Abraham lived in something more than a pup tent. God took him outside and said, now look toward the heavens and count the stars. If you're able to count them. He said to him, so shall your descendants be. And look at verse 6 there. Then Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. Okay, bonus question time. If you really believe God, will you do what he's told you to do? If you really believe your parents when they tell you to do something, that they're going to take the belt to you if you don't, they've told you 500 or 600 times to do something, and they're telling you now, do what I told you to, and you say, yes, I believe you. And you go off and do something else. Did you believe them? No. And our mean old parents ask us that question. Didn't you believe what I told you? That this was your last chance? Now you're in trouble. And they usually ask us some dumb question. Do you like this, being in trouble now? I say that as a dumb question because I had a brother that would say, yeah, I love to get a spanking. And so my folks would give him another one. I always said that's probably what was wrong with him. And he knows I pick on him. But
With our children, and therefore God with us, if you never lie to them, they have no reason to disbelieve. We have no reason to disbelieve God. God says, I'm going to wipe you out. It makes us very careful what we, or it should make us very careful what we say to our children, to each other. There used to be a saying, a southern saying anyway, my word is my bond. And I could have a bazillion sheets of paper to sign our name to because somebody's going to take us to court because we didn't do what we said we were going to do. When God tells us, you obey me or you go to hell, he's not sending us to hell. He's telling us if we don't do what he says, he's not going to tell us 500 different times.
that's right.
He's told us, he's given us his word. That's it.
And the other side of that coin is, if he tells us, I will bless you if you do what you're told, he means it. Absolutely. And the comment made here in verse 6, and Abraham believed God. And God says, okay, you're doing the right thing. Then you come to chapter 16 in Genesis. And the good idea fairy beats Abram and Sarah senseless. We don't have a child. Abraham is supposed to be the one to have a child. So what will we do? I've got a handmaiden, one of Sarah's servants. I'll give her to Abraham and he can have a child with her, and that will be the one that is born to Abraham. I mean, his servant, Eliezer of Damascus, was not a descendant of Abraham. But this way we'll have one. is there an important lesson to learn about when we decide, God, you need some help to get this done? You're just not doing it. What?
Paying for it today.
Yeah. That's the source of every single thing that goes wrong in this world. Is somebody, I think, that this will substitute for what God said. How does that work out? Not well. Do you realize how poorly that works out?
Well, in more ways than one. I mean, Ishmael becomes a pain in the neck to everybody in the family.
For how long?
He's still a pain in the neck.
He's still a pain in the neck. Do you know who the so-called Palestinian people are that are fighting with Israel? Where they come from? Descendants of Ishmael. Wow. Now, that's not to say, by the way, with Christ's intervention in the world, there's a large number of those people that have become Christians. And we ought to be thankful to the Lord for that. But more important than today, than whether you're Jew or Gentile or Palestinian or purple people eater, the only thing that matters, are you a child of Jesus Christ? Are you part of his family? Hagar and Ishmael, you can read chapter 16 there. Kind of an interesting one, but we're going to jump ahead. We're going to quit here. Chapter 18. Have a read of that one for next Sunday. Sarah is 89 years old and Abram is 99. I don't know how they do it. I know how much I hurt, and I'm not anywhere near 99. Can you imagine? And, okay, any of y'all that have grown kids, would you like to start over? Amen. There's a good reason that God gives children to young people instead of to old people. Now you do understand too that old people are now trying to get into heaven, so the way they treat their grandchildren is entirely different than the way they treated their children. Things that you would have killed your children for doing, you will give candy to your grandchildren and say, "You're a wonderful child. And Grandma loves you." One of our grandsons, the very first thing that he said to me, the first time he got left alone with me, he just barely talking good. His mother leaves, his grandmother leaves, and he comes up to me and he says, "Grandpa." I said, "Yes." He said, "Chocolate." I think that makes the point well. Good place to quit. So have a little read ahead there.
You know, when you think about the promise made to Abraham, it is nearly right up there with the promise made to Mary. If, you know, to be told you're going to be father of God's nation.
Exactly. And important to understand that is that the Apostle Paul in the New Testament continues to repeat that same thing. Guys, you, if you do what's right, are the descendants of Abraham. Be part of the right family, the family that does the right thing, serves God. Next week.